Okay, now today I'm talking about the 1958 Hammer Film Productions movie Dracula, or as it was called in the United States, The Horror of Dracula. And the reason for the name change in the United States was not for audiences to get confused with the 1931 Universal classic Dracula, which starred Bela Lugosi. And I made some copious notes here. And as I say, the reason that the title was changed to The Horror of Dracula in the United States was because not to confuse it with the Bela Lugosi movie, which was still showing from time to time in theatres until Universal Pictures released a package of what it was called, the deal was called the Creature Features, to television in the early 1960s. Now the film starred Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, and I think we can say that in this movie both actors gave career-defining performances. So let's talk about the film. Now, as I say, I've made a lot of notes here because there are certain aspects that I wanted to make sure that I talked about because I felt it was important. And I wanted to get it all get started. Now, as I said, the film starred Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee. Both give some of the finest performances they would ever give. Now, as soon as the film starts, it's punching. There's nothing subtle. We get a bombastic score. Wagner on steroids. Should it be Wagner on steroids? The composer James Bernard said in interviews that he broke down the syllables in the word Dracula, Dracula, to get something like ba ba ba, and it really is a bomb. A bombastic theme tune. The soundtrack throughout the movie is quite superb. As the camera, the scene on the screen, then we've got this blood red font, gothic font, which tells us what film we're watching, gives us the cast, the directors, the producers, all that. An Hammer film production. And then the camera zooms in on Dracula's coffin. It's just a grey stone thing with the name Dracula on it, and all of a sudden there is splatter, it's blood dropping. It's blood dropping on the coffin, overly saturated red blood, vivid red blood, and this was quite groundbreaking when the movie came out, because blood like this had never been seen in any horror movie previously, or any movie really. And this exaggerated red of the blood also suited Hammer's kind of gothic, cod gothic feel throughout the movies. Now, the story of Dracula is rejiggled somewhat from the novel in order to fit it into its 90 minutes run-in time, and I think the writer Jimmy Sangster did a great job. He does away with most of the Dracula story. I mean, there's no Dracula searching for an home in England, there's no Renfield year, there's no shipwreck on Whitby, and instead the film takes place entirely in a fictionalized German. Now, as I say, the story is rejiggled. It takes place almost entirely in and around the town of Klausenberg, which is an alternative name for the city of Club-Napucha, and you'll have to excuse the pronunciation there, I probably got both of them wrong, which was, for a while back in the 18th century, and the 19th century, the capital of the province of Transylvania. Although in reality the film was shot almost entirely in and around Berkshire in England, but the English countryside doubles up really good for this fictional, supposedly German setting that we get throughout the movie. So let's look at how the story is truncated and changed somewhat. So Dracula is visited by Jonathan Harker. Now, Jonathan Harker is not out there as in the original novel, under the pretense of index in Dracula's library. The Christopher Lee's Dracula that we've given you seems to be very literary, and he wants his library in reasonable order. But soon into the film we get the reveal that Jonathan Harker is actually working with Van Helsing, whom we haven't seen yet. Harker is actually a vampire hunter. He knows that Dracula is a vampire, and he's come there under the pretense of sorting out his books in order to destroy him. But that doesn't go well. At one point he meets the bride of Dracula. She bites him. He wakes up realizing that he's been bitten and that he's infected by vampires, and so he goes to the tomb. But rather, he finds both Dracula, and this is daylight, he finds both Dracula and his bride asleep in their separate coffins, and for some bizarre reason he decides to drive the stake through the bride's heart first. And this is quite a gruesome scene for its time, and must have had cinema goers gasping, because nothing like this had ever been seen on the screen before, and he graphically drives the stake in. Drives the stake into the woman. From there, Dracula, of course, awakes, sorts Harker out. Then we have Peter Cushing arriving in the inn. Cushing goes there. Then Peter Cushing is called back. He meets up with Arthur Holmwood, whose niece, Lucy, is suffering seemingly from anemia. Cushing realizes that Dracula has been visiting her. At one point he orders that garlic is put around the windows and around the doors, so there's a lot of vampire folklore brought into this. Although interestingly, one bit of vampire folklore, and that is that a vampire can transmogrify into another beast, a wolf or a bat. That's done away with in this, and Peter Cushing's got a nice line that explains that this is a common fallacy. This was probably something to do with the budget of the movie, and I'm not wanting to create any bat special effects, which is probably best decision, because during that period any bat special effects weren't particularly effective. But this film, of course, the script tells you that no, that's a fallacy, that vampires can turn into bats or wolves or whatever. Although Emma sometime backtracked on that in later movies in the Dracula or vampire franchise, and that very thing did happen. But anyway, it's a wonderfully compact story. The dialogue is great throughout. You know, it doesn't really come across as corny at all as some of the later Dracula movies do. Now I want to talk about both Christopher Lee's performance and Peter Cushing's. Now Christopher Lee, I believe he had, and I made that note here, so Christopher Lee only had 16 lines in the entire film. It was on screen for less than 10 minutes, and yet he completely dominates. He doesn't wear a lot of makeup, other than the false fangs and contact lenses, which left him almost totally blind. And we'll talk a little about that at the end of the video now, where I've got some little trivia sections to give you. But his performance is absolutely superb. Superb. He gives off a sexuality as Count Dracula, and this is evident in the scenes with both Lucy and Mina, whose Dracula is visiting almost nightly and draining blood from them. Eventually, of course, he'll destroy them and turn them into a vampire. But at that period, when we both see both women, Lucy and Mina, they're in the initial stages of being seduced by Count Dracula, and there's some. The sexuality of the part is played well by Christopher Lee, but it's also heightened by the two actresses, because Lucy, she gets out of bed, she walks to the window, she opens the window, and then she lays back in the bed waiting for Dracula to appear, and there's a look of expectation on her face, you know, of expectations of great pleasure. And it's the same with Mina. And one scene, Mina has gone to visit Dracula during the night, and When her husband arrives home in the morning to find her not in bed, he asks her where she been. She comes through the door saying that she got up early and took a morning walk, but she has a look on her face, a look of pure delight, as if she's just had a night of the greatest sex ever. And that's what the director told the actress. He said, I want you to play the scene as if you've just come back from a party and had the greatest sex you've ever had. So the sexuality of the character is very much emphasized in the Hammer movies. The women, of course, are all buxom, and they dressed in revealing costumes that reveal large portions of their breasts, which was another Hammer trademark. You know, it was all vivid red blood and heaving bosoms. Now, Christopher Lee, as I say, he has only a small amount of lines, he has only a small amount of screen time, but he completely dominates the picture. And for many people, he is the definitive Dracula. I love the Bela Lugosi version, I really do adore that, but I think, particularly in this film, Dracula, or The Order of Dracula, Christopher Lee did embody the Bram Stoker character. Christopher Lee didn't agree with that, and he didn't think that the scripts, the creation of Dracula in the scripts was anything like Bram Stoker's original version. And whilst I can't really argue with that, I have read Bram Stoker's original novel and I've seen several Dracula movies, so I don't think it matters how close any of these movies' version of Dracula is to the actual novel character, because Dracula has outgrown the novel now and taken on a life of itself, or an unlife of itself. Now, I'd like to touch on the physicality of Peter Cushing's performance here. When Cushing played this part, in this particular movie, he's around 40 years of age, but his physicality is superb. He's leaping and jumping about. He's a proper swashbuckling hero in this, and also he has some of the lines that are in danger of becoming camp with a lesser actor, but he pulls it all off with panache. Now, if you're enjoying this video so far, and there's a little bit more to come, I've got some trivia here which I've scoured the internet for, relating to the film, but I would like you to please consider subscribing to this channel. Click the subscribe button down below. It doesn't cost you nothing, but it does help this channel grow, and I really appreciate it. Also, if you like this video, give me a thumbs up and maybe leave a comment. Is Dracula your favourite? Is this version of Dracula your favourite version of Dracula? What other versions do you like? Do you think Christopher Lee tops Bela Lugosi as the Count? Or are you one of those purists who prefers Bela Lugosi's portrayal? Or even, let's go way back in time and go back to the days of Nosferatu, The Silence. Anyway, there's been so many versions of Dracula, and no doubt there are so many more versions to come. So leave a comment, let me know what's your favourite. There are some mistakes in the film, towards the end of the film, when Peter Cushing destroys Dracula by tearing open a window and sending sunlight onto Dracula. Sunlight, of course, being fatal to a vampire. That's explained in the film. Christopher Lee goes into spasms from the pain shortly before the curtain is pulled open. There's also a scene 3/4 of the way through the film where Dracula is carried away from his castle in a white coffin and placed in the cellar of the Olmwood's residence, but this coffin has got a crucifix on the lid, a big large crucifix on the lid, so Dracula shouldn't have been able to rest in that coffin, nor should he have been able to enter it, really. Also, and this has been pedantic, but I just discovered this today while Googling trivia about this movie, but the term teddy bear, which Peter Cushing's character uses when he covers a young child with his coat to protect her from the elements, and he says, "There, you look like a teddy bear." Apparently the term wasn't coined until 1902, which is 17 years after the film takes place, but there we are. The movie only had a budget of $80,000, but ended up making $25 million US. The film was shot between November the 1st, 1957 and January the 3rd, 1958, and it premiered at the Warner Theatre in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on March the 8th, 1958, and on its first day it took in $1,682. In Britain it opened at London's Garment Theatre on March 22nd, 1958. Now, as I say, I think this is a perfect film. The mistakes that I just read out to you, to be honest, I never noticed them except for the one. I did notice the cross on the white coffin, and I thought Dracula couldn't get into there. But I never noticed most of this, and I only found this from scouring the internet and looking for trivia related to the Dracula movie. And here is some more trivia.
He's made it then.
Yeah, sorry. David had a little problem with his roof. Nothing a few nails won't fix.
But there's a Jameson on the table for you.
Thanks.
So, which way did you come?
I'm past old John Brennan's place.
John, I thought he lived 2 towns over.
I think he was moving.
How's the new horse, Paul?
Cracking. Yeah, she really flies.
Back in 1780, times were rough, but thanks to Jameson, at least the whiskey was smooth. Jameson, easygoing Irish.
Sir Christopher Lee is one of only 2 actors to play both Dracula and Frankenstein's monster. Having played the monster in The Curse of Frankenstein 1957, the other is Bela Lugosi, who played Dracula in Dracula 1931, and Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein 1948, and Frankenstein's monster in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. So that's a nice bit of trivia. According to Christopher Lee, when this movie premiered, people were gasping and screaming at the screen. And that was just during the opening credits sequence when the blood, as I mentioned, dripped onto the coffin. It was considered graphic, of course, during a period. When Dracula first appears at the top of the staircase, it is reported in several trade magazines from the period, contemporary trade magazines, that the audience reacted with magnificent applause. Some people were so afraid of Christopher Lee when he left the theatre, so claimed Christopher Lee. Lee was famous for refusing to discuss Dracula in his later years. He really didn't like to discuss the role. Wasn't happy with his performance. He wasn't happy with the film, which a lot of people couldn't figure out because it is recognised as a bona fide classic. In many lists, it's listed among the top British films ever made, and it is a superb horror film. And if not the best version of Dracula, then it's in the top 5. Lee told an interviewer, the character is not Stoker's Dracula. However, in several of the subsequent Dracula movies, Dracula has little and sometimes no dialogue. As I mentioned earlier, and this is down to a bit of trivia, is Lee's contact lenses were not only painful and uncomfortable, but also totally impractical. Lee described himself as being almost rendered blind while wearing them, and he missed his mark several times. In the scene when he finds his bride biting Jonathan Harker, he runs towards her, but during the first take he ran straight past her and into the camera. So that's Hammer's 1958 Dracula, or as it's better known now, The Horror of Dracula. I think it's an absolutely superb film. It stands up well to this day, and it's got a charm that all of the Hammer films have. The gothic setting of the movies is, it's exaggerated. It's kind of a pastiche of the gothic style, but it's really effective. It's really good. Christopher Lee's performance is absolutely exceptional, as is Peter Cushing, and the entire supporting cast, from Michael Gough to everyone else, is absolutely superb. So it's a great movie, Hammer, Horror of Dracula, or simply Dracula. Anyway, check it out. Thanks for watching. Please come back. There'll be more film reviews, there'll be more book reviews, there'll be more of everything here. Let's go fade out with a retro ad.
Starting tomorrow for 12 days, the Daily Mail New Year Car Contest. Win the brand new Escort Cabriolet, the stylish Cavalier, the award-winning Fiat Uno, the mighty Metro Turbo, the brilliant Citroën BX. These are just a few of the glittering prizes, cars or cash alternatives, to be won over the next fortnight. Starting tomorrow, only in the Daily Mail.